Hello there folks, my name's Ben and welcome to another Shots Fired Airsoft video. Today we're doing the firing test and review of the new Worker Harrier. So there's an unboxing one video going on the channel with this. For those of you that haven't watched it, we have essentially Worker's new flagship manual Springer, suited to various power levels. We have hot swappable threaded barrels, we have quick swappable springs, we have a manual automatic return on the pump grip, which is nice. Very nice accents. We've got a nice metal handguard here. Standard Talon compatible magwell, M4 buffer tube stock with their own design of M4 sort of style stock for the buffer tube, which is very nice, multi-position. And really there isn't too much more to go over on it. We're going to get straight to the chronograph because I have 3 barrels and 3 different springs to try, and each spring is suited to its own barrel, so I'll get on with that now. Okay, so here we go. Setup is the shortest barrel, plastic scar, and we're running a short 6-start magazine that Worker supply with the Harrier that gives us essentially 6 shots per shot over the chrono, which is nice. And these are Worker Gen 2 HEs, so we're going to see what we get out of the Harrier. Oh, fantastic. Not fantastic. Not fantastic. And not fantastic. So I'm just going to try some Gen 3 darts because that's what comes with the blaster and see what kind of performance we get out of that. Okay, so this is short barrel, short spring and Worker Gen 3. See what we get. Bit healthier. Better. Very nice. So about 165 to 170 on Worker Gen 3s. Bit concerning, doesn't appear to like Worker Gen 2 HEs because that would be my style of dart I like using. However, I'm going to bang the bigger spring and barrel that comes with the Harrier, sort of like the mid-level barrel, and we'll see if that's a bit more friendly towards the Worker Gen 2s. Okay, so we're back. We now have the longer barrel. This is the most powerful setup you will get in the box with the Harrier, and we're going to try some slightly more, hopefully successful Worker Gen 2 HEs through. I think obviously the barrel drag is probably greater with Worker Gen 2 HE. They tend to have a better fit in the barrel. So I'm hoping that the stronger spring and like the longer barrel will overcome that, but we'll find out. Okay, that's a more promising start for the Worker Gen 2 HEs. There's the 200. Still not hitting that great, but it's not too bad. So we're a bit all over the place there. Just going to pop 2 Worker Gen 3s through it and just see if they are more successful. It may just be that with this blaster you really want to be running Gen 3s. I mean, to be fair to it, it does come with Gen 3s in the box, but again, so do all Worker Springers. I think we hit the side of the chronograph there. No, there's something weird going on with this. I'm going to show you something about the barrel fit on these new Worker threaded barrels. So I've got 2 in the mag, and what's been happening to me while I've been chronographing is the darts haven't been staying in place in the barrel. So if I pull that forward and point the end down, the dart will just fall out. I'll do that again. So the barrel fit on, well, the dart fit on these barrels is horrendous, at least for Worker Gen 3s. So as I've been firing it, I've been loading that up. The dart has been slipping partway down the barrel and then firing from like here, or maybe even there, hence the terrible performance. So then folks, full beans, 450mm barrel, 1.6300 spring. This is about the top of what the Harrier is capable of. There is a slightly longer barrel, however, it will probably only net you another 10 FPS because the plunger's about out of breath. That's a bit more like it. 262, 282, 276.8, 251.9. So we'll check how many rounds I've fired because I can't remember. I've got 1 left. That's 265. So yeah, it can hit plenty hard if you want it to. Obviously we're through the little resin scar there as well, but yeah, we'll talk about more about this in a sec, but this is where I would want to run the Harrier. However, unfortunately, the Harrier does have some issues with running here, but we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so chronograph, quite interesting. Why Worker would supply Gen 3 darts with the Harrier if the barrels aren't at all suited to them, I don't really know. However, we did get a reasonable performance on the minimum barrel and spring out of the Worker Gen 3 simply because the lesser air pressure of that was able to push that dart nice and cleanly out of the barrel. That is great. However, if you are planning on using the Harrier any sort of higher power levels, you're going to need a better dart like a Gen 2 HE, like I used in the higher FPS testing with the medium barrel and spring. The other thing is on the medium barrel and spring, I'm still getting 170, 180. I have seen better figures than that for this, but I have 100% air seal. I'm using brand new darts. It is quite wet today. Humidity can make quite a difference to Nerf darts. They are very susceptible to swelling. However, you would think that would make the Gen 3s actually work in the barrel better. So just taking that kind of into account. Postman must have arrived next door. The dog's going mad. Hold on. Okay, I think that's done. Yeah, what was I saying? On the big spring and the long barrel gives us around 260 FPS average with a high of 282. That is going some. That is a very powerful Nerf blaster. The only problem is this is following on from the heels of things like the Swift, and the Swift was realistically a 350 FPS blaster. It cost around the same as this as well for most retailers that you can find at the moment. This is better built and far more handleable than the Swift. The Swift was the weird elongated front end with the massive prime that was very odd to handle, but because of that huge prime, that the draw of the prime was very light. Whereas this, when you put a big spring in it, it's actually quite, you know, punchy. It might be that putting the 16250 spring in is probably the better option for longevity, as well as helping out the catch, which is apparently a bit of an issue in these at higher spring weights. But aside from that, like I say, Worker Gen 2 HEs at anything over the minimum barrel and spring, I reckon. Get away with Worker Gen 3s on the minimum and still get reasonable performance. And the little scar on the end doesn't appear to affect performance that much. I think you get about another 20 FPS if you took it off. However, what I would say on that is that anyone running anything over like 150 FPS in a Nerf blaster, you really want a scar on the end just to make sure your darts are going to come out consistently, rather than some will go straight even without a scar, and a lot will fishtail. Right, enough waffle, let's go back and do some target shooting with it.
Okay then folks, as tradition dictates, you're mounted on the top of my noggin. I have a 15 rounder in the Harrier with about 12 rounds loaded in. And we're just going to see what it does. This is still on the top beans FPS. If the little scar barrel has issues at this FPS, then I will drop it back to the medium barrel. However, this is the best functioning barrel and spring combo for me that I've tested. So I'm just going to see how it goes. Yeah, the scar's a bit wild, but as long as you get a good shot, it will go exactly where you're aiming it. Just like to point out, I have absolutely no optics on this. I'm literally just staring down the barrel and trying to line it up, so this shot will probably be wild. Not too bad. I'm going to do that once more, and then we'll move on. Okay, second pop at this. Probably should just mention, for anyone that doesn't usually frequent my channel, this is about 18 meters away. So probably like prime Nerf engagement distance really, although not with this kind of FPS. But just gonna give it another 12 bangers. And that's it, I'm out. That was a good guess on the darts there. Yeah, she's good.
Okay, so impressions of the Worker Harrier. Or my sort of general feelings on it. Barrels need to be better. This is Worker's new series of threaded barrels. They only fit this blaster. They are not cross-compatible with, like, say, Jet threaded barrels or any other threaded barrel that's come out in Nerf. This is Worker's own thread. That's fair enough, but the barrels don't seem to be that fantastic. I mean, on the higher spring and barrel, higher spring load and the longer barrel, it was functioning very well. However, Worker have actually come out and said that this is more really aimed at the 1.4 and sort of like the springs and barrels that come in the box with the Harrier. Those are the two sort of springs and barrels that I had issues with. It works a lot better when you brute force it and just shove the biggest spring and a decent barrel in it and use your higher end darts. Having said that, this is a platform overall, if we can just get away from talking about FPS for a minute, because that's not the most important thing in the world at times. This is a cracking platform and it handles very well. It's customizable because of all the tack rails and the fact that you can swap your stock for whatever you want. It's very comfortable because of the rubberized grip, and the aluminium handguard looks cracking, so you're unlikely to injure yourself or anything when you're actually using this. Trigger is nice. What I will say on the trigger is it starts to get a bit hair trigger as you go up the spring loads. This one does feel pretty healthy, I must say. A lot of people have said that even just cramming this 1.6 300 spring off the bat made theirs a bit hair triggery and a bit kind of a bit 50-50 on whether it was going to catch or not. Not had any issues with this one, it just catches every time. So that is good, but that is something to watch out for if you are planning on running the Harrier hard. So like the fact you're able to just swap barrels on the fly, swap springs on the fly, it's always pretty handy. But I will just say that the takedown is very handy, but most people will set it up once for their games and just never touch it again. So whilst I do think it is very handy to have if we're going to weaken the blaster in any way, or if we're going to make it more susceptible to failure, doing that, I would rather just have a one-piece receiver that I've got split open down the middle. I'm sure that other people might disagree with that. However, at the end of the day, most people have local Nerf games to them that are a set FPS, and you won't ever use anything other than that. So you put the barrel and spring in it once and leave it. Just my thoughts on all these takedown things. But yeah, apart from that, really enjoyed using it. It is a lovely piece of kit. Mine will be going to a new owner because I get the feeling that once we start getting towards that 250, 260 FPS, which is primarily where I play and would use a manual springer, especially seeing as modern flat brushless flywheelers and that, are getting to the point where they can easily hit 200 FPS, which kind of, and they also have things like burst fire and full auto. This will be more accurate, but when you can fire 20 darts a second, does that really matter? I kind of think like a Springer platform these days that struggles to reliably hit 250 FPS over a long period of time is kind of a bit out of place. I mean, obviously we've had Sabres on the channel, we had the Worker Swift on the channel. I actually maxed my Swift out in the end and I managed to get about 364 FPS out of it, I think. Just going to hop in here, and when I was editing this back I realised that I didn't really get what I wanted to say about the Harrier across very well. I feel that the Harrier is a very premium feeling blaster for the price point. However, it is also a relatively low performing blaster for the price point. Something like a Game Face Trion is about $80. The Worker Harrier at $200 is realistically comfortable hitting the same FPS as the Game Face Trion. I'm not saying that the Worker Harrier is a bad blaster. The way it handles, the way it feels, and its features reflect a premium price point for this level of blaster. It is many steps ahead of something like a Nexus Pro or equivalent blaster. I have not personally played or held a Game Face Trion blaster, but I know the performance is kind of on par. I've no doubt that people will get more out the Harrier as time goes on with upgrade parts, strengthening of the catch, the ability to put larger springs in, but like I said, Worker have said that this is aimed at a lower FPS, and for that price they're asking a lot. That's been enough waffle. I've been Ben. It's been a Shots Fired Airsoft video. Thank you very much for watching.